Welcome to the Stoughton Writers Group on TV. I'm Mike Harbin, the founder of the group, and we talk writing with authors, and we encourage would-be authors and also support reading and writing efforts in our communities. And today I have an old friend, well, not old because we're not old, but I have a friend and a colleague that I always admired her work, and I was always proud to be working beside her. And now we get to talk to my friend Mary Ford about her two incredible books, the latest, Rebecca Road. Mary, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Mike. It's so great to reunite with you.
It really is. I want to ask you because we were colleagues and stuff like that, and I always admired your writing. And I always think that it's a journalist and then there's writing. There's two separate, but you've able to like sprint into the new author way of doing things.
Well, I don't know if I'd call it a sprint. I feel like I'm the hare and I'm the tortoise.
Yeah,
definitely. So for me, the biggest challenge is when I retired from the newspapers, which I love in my career, but it was time, not only because the clock or the calendar moves on, but the industry was definitely changing and not in a direction that I wanted to be part of anymore. But so when I first started writing the book about my husband's youth, I went to some meetups, and meetups are free usually, and they're online and whatever. And the young man that was teaching the one that was in Abington, there were about 20 in the group. He said, Mary, he said, you have to learn to leave the newswoman behind. So what I was doing was I was reporting. I wasn't being an author. So for me, the transition from reporting to authorship was kind of rocky, but I figured it out the same way I figured out how to be a journalist when I didn't go to journalism school. So it was a challenge, but I kept writing and rewriting. And the one thing that I always did was I welcomed critiques. I welcomed someone who wanted to show me the way to do it or a better way to do it. I'm not someone who, and I've run into this as an editor with I had reporters working for me, and I run into it now with a lot of the writing groups, is that people are very possessive about their writing and they don't want to hear if they should go in another direction. So
I found when we were having a memoir, my book, and doing that is I got 250 words and I stopped because it was like being a journalist.
Yeah.
I go, cut this, make this tight, and then I go, wait, I don't have to do this. And I think my book was 40 pages long, the first draft that I did, it was right to the point. Yep. But so I had to go back, and it was a freedom to go back and write that. Did you find the freedom as an author?
I did, and I find that it's harder to write short than it is to write long. And I think that, I notice that your book isn't 600 pages, and neither is mine. I think we're on trend. Because I think a lot of people today want to read something, but they want to get over it in a few days, not weeks or months. So a shorter novel or a shorter memoir that reaches all of the topics that you want to reach and adds the flavor and the humanity and the emotion is really what you need without adding a lot of peripheral.
I have practical views for that. Books that are 500, 600 pages, when they fall on your head when you're sleeping, they hurt.
Yeah.
200-pound books don't hurt when they fall on your head.
Yeah.
But when you said going from the transition, you were always a writer, though. I mean, when you were a journalist, you were a great journalist, obviously.
Right.
But you were a great writer, too. You had that's always hard, but you had the two tools.
Well, I did, but writing, again, as we discussed earlier, is a craft. I fully believe that, and I think you learn by doing. I think that most people, if not all people, can be writers. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be Ernest Hemingway, but you can write. And if you have, as you know from journalism, if you have a good story, it's going to be easy to write, and your writing ability doesn't have to be that great if the story is really good. So you just have to keep working. And I used to say when I hired reporters, I used to have the simple question, and they would always get it wrong. And I'd say, are you a writer first or are you a reporter first? And they always said writer, and that was the wrong answer because it's harder to teach someone how to report. It's harder to teach them how to get the story, and then the writing follows that along.
But you're writing, you were always a storyteller, though.
Well, I recognized a good story. That was one of my talents in journalism. Like I could go to a meeting and the average reporter would come back and say nothing happened and it was boring. And I could always find a little kernel in there and make it into a story. And it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed being a reporter and being a journalist.
What about making the transition to a novelist, writer that you do now? What is the enjoyment out of that? What's different than you thought it would be?
Well, I wanted to keep going. So I found that, like, when I first retired, when you do papers, as you know, and you do them, if someone had told me back in when I first got promoted to be an editor, it was 1992, if someone said, Mary, you're going to put out 2,000 papers, I would have run down the street screaming. So I just took each week at a time and tried to do my best and cope with what's happening. So I found that when I left that behind, it was like falling off a cliff. I wasn't someone, I don't play golf. I enjoy sitting and, listening to music, but I wanted to do more. So I dove into my husband's story. He was a teenage runaway growing up in East Tennessee, and he was the 15th of 16 children. So what I had done over the years, I always thought, someone's got to write. Your story is so interesting. Someday I'm going to write this story. So I had him do these tapes. And when he would go back to Tennessee, I'd say, just talk into the tapes and remember everything. And so my first job was transcribing and going through those tapes, which was drudgery. I did it.
I want to talk about that. I want to talk about your books, but now we're on that book. Let's talk a little bit about that. I consider that a love story, your book about Conley. It's just, I read it and I knew Conley a little bit. I didn't know him well, but I knew him from the Merida meetings and stuff like that. But that, I just find these two people are in love. And there's a labor of love. I mean, it's different than Rebecca Road.
Right.
Yeah, because that's when that's different. It's just different. But this book here, it just, boy, the crossroads going through her life. You see a guy that had all the cards against him.
Right.
And then he came back, and then he just became class president, became successful in business, raised a great family, married a great wife. He checked off all the boxes from not being from having nothing. He came from
hard scrabble Appalachia, basically, and was able to turn his life around. And so when you say that, it makes me feel so good, because I really think, and one of the reviews, I'd put it that way, it could be life-changing for some young people that have made bad decisions.
Exactly.
To understand that they could still make good decisions going forward and use what they've learned.
Sure. There's one guy, I know the story a little bit, but I want to know, you guys are on the Newlywed Game. I think that is such a great thing. And you finished last, and you were married 55 years. That's amazing. 50 years. That's amazing.
We finished last
twice, yeah.
So we were and for those of you out there that remember the Newlywed Game, when Bob Eubanks was the host, and we only had 3 channels, and everyone watched the Newlywed Game. Mm-hmm. So people that I had no idea who they were saw us on that game, and they stopped us years later. We were at a lunch in Cohasset, and this woman came up to us and she said, I've been struggling. This was 30 years after we were on it, where I've seen you before, and it came to me, you were on the Newlywed. So, we were completely incompatible for all 50 years of marriage, but we made it work.
Well, what does the Newlywed Game know?
Yeah. Right? People will always say, what's the key to a long marriage? And I said, don't get divorced.
Yeah.
I'll
go to the Newlywed Game and finish last. That's a good idea to do. Do you go back and read that book now, the first book?
I do. I go back. It's also it's a pretty good audio book for that. Yeah. The man that I hired to do the audio was from East Tennessee, and he's an actor. He lives in Manhattan, but he was able to kind of capture a little bit of the twang. The East Tennesseans have a different little twang than, let's say, Georgians do, and whatever. But it's there, and my husband. The thing that was so rewarding for me was he did contract Parkinson's, and he suffered terribly. He had a very advanced form, but he loved that book. He loved getting that out and sharing it with his family, and his class reunions and all that. He was actually a member of 2 classes because he ran away and they made him stay back, and then he got
become class president. My father grew up in West Virginia, so Appalachian very good. I kind of got the book when I read it.
Yeah.
But there was more to the book than that. I thought, I think it's just you feel it. I mean, I always tell people, like when I have writing classes with people and they're writing, I don't want to write a book. Don't worry about writing a book. Write down your memories. Right. That's a love story or a gift to your great grandchildren. In some form the book's going to be there.
Right.
They're going to be able, one day they're going to go, geez, I'd love to see what my great grandparents were like.
And I think too, because I know people, I'm in a lot of senior activities. I'm at the senior center, and everyone wants to write their memoir, but take a segment of it, get the story, And that's what people then, if you're more interested in, if I'm interested in having the book be a commercial success in addition to a personal one.
Right.
So it isn't just for my grandchildren to read one day, it's for anyone.
Right.
And so, in fact, a couple that we knew when we lived in, we were transferred a lot with Conley's job. So we were living in Minnesota, and a couple across the street were from Switzerland, and we became really good friends with them. And then we lost touch.
Mm-hmm.
And Fritz, this was maybe 2 years ago, reached out to me through the social media, and he said, Mary, he said, I've been Googling Conley Ford, and this book came up, but he couldn't seem to get it in Switzerland. So I mailed him a copy. And then he wrote me the nicest note. He said, Ursula and I were so touched by this book that we've given whatever $200 is in Swiss money to the local Troubled Boys Club. And I just thought that was so nice.
Yeah, the book is so inspirational.
Yeah,
That's what I love.
you could do it.
But I think it's inspirational. And I looked out and I've been thinking about you a couple days now because I knew you were coming on the show and communicating. I thought, no, it's a love story.
Yeah,
It's a wife gift to a husband that she adored.
Yeah,
And that's exactly what it is. I mean, and I I'm not, rushing great grandchildren.
Yeah.
But I'm doing a story of my parents being during the war and and I would love to know what they said, what they were thinking.
Yeah.
And you guys know that. You guys shared that. You don't have to look too far because you do the work too.
Well, I know the tapes helped a lot because he caught a lot of the flavor. He had a great memory for this minutia, and he was such a character. I mean, my family, everyone loved him because he could fix things. For one thing, he had to fix stuff. No one in my family can fix a thing.
And you need that one guy in your life. You need the one guy, and you need the guy that knows everybody, that knows everybody.
Yeah.
You need those two guys, and you're all set.
Exactly.
And you had in the same guy.
I had the same guy. Yeah, definitely.
And now your new book is a beautiful book too, Rebecca. It's just, you write so beautifully.
Well,
I mean, and I always like to listen to the person's audio book too.
Yeah.
To see what the person reading is like.
Yeah.
And the word, I think sometimes when you do it the audio book, you're not reading, so you're focusing a little bit, you're different walking around, and the words just catch you.
Yeah.
And I was reading the parts of Rebecca Road, it was like, okay, I was there. And I think that's the beauty of the book is I feel like I'm in 1956 Scituate, and the storm's coming,
Right.
And what the heck's going to go on here? And, Scituate is a great place to write about because you have the ocean and you have the history and all that too. What made you want to write that book? What stood out?
Well, we lived in the area. We lived right near Cedar Point in Sand Hills. And so I was in the second grade and I witnessed the salvage operation. We go up after school every day and watch it. And so I remember it so clearly. And a funny little aside, I drew a picture. And of course, I'm a second grader, so it's not going to make it to the Smithsonian anytime soon. But and I sent it to my grandfather, my mom's dad, and I wrote a nice note, and I said, "Here, Grandpa," and they had been down to see it. So he wrote me this, he typed note back, and I was so upset because he sent the picture back. And at the time, I thought he would keep it and put it in his office. But now I'm glad I have it back because I framed it. But so we were there every day, and the funny thing was it was kind of fixed on holidays. So the Etrusco crashed on St. Patrick's Day. In 56. On Columbus Day, it was supposed to go, and 50,000 people showed up, and it didn't move. So then it did leave on Thanksgiving. Now, we had been there every day, and on Thanksgiving, we would go to my dad's family. So we were in Concord, and when we came back, the ship was gone, and my mother was so mad because she said, we watched this thing. So then what happened, they renamed it the SS Scituate. And it sailed by on Christmas Day in 1956 to say goodbye to the town. So I just had this in the back of my mind. And when we were transferred back to this part of the country, I thought, someone should do a book on this ship and, a novel and make up everything in the book is made up except the ship. That's all true, how they got it off and what the process was and everything. So I just thought it was a great story. And it's like one of my editors that I used through Grub Street, I don't know if you're familiar with Grub Street in Boston, but he said, remember, a book should have a clothesline.
Yeah.
And the ship is the clothesline. So it's in every chapter. It's not always the main character.
In this case, the anchor.
But it's the anchor for the story. So I had a lot of fun with it. It took a lot of drafts. I tend to be too fast sometimes, so I'll have a really important scene and it's a paragraph. And
That's the journalist in you.
You've got to
gotta stretch it out.
Pull it out, yeah.
But she's not you because
no, nothing like. Well,
no,
I was kind of shy and stuff.
Yeah,
but
that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
talk about the great character Catherine Flanagan in the book. You want to know her, though. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I have a theory about writing. Okay, we talk about writing in here. That you have to like a character in a book.
Yeah.
It often comes down to cops and robbers.
Yeah.
You know, you gotta like the cops in the book or something like that, and you like her, even though you know she doesn't.
She's very restrained.
I don't want to give away the plots of the book, but.
Well, I think that the thing for me was that women my age, baby boomer women, we were raised with Sleeping Beauty. We were raised with Cinderella, Snow White, and we believed our prince would come. Now, he never showed up, but he does show up in this book.
Why did you do the prince? Was that something in your mind that you thought they wanted?
Well, we always thought some guy in shining armor and a white stallion would come and take us off into the distance. You know, that's how we were raised. This doesn't actually happen, but this handsome, swarthy Italian guy arrives and kind of rescues this young widow.
Mm-hmm. Is there any part of her that's you?
I would only say the part would be that she was kind of restrained and reserved.
That's the only part that's there.
Yeah.
How'd you make her? Is she somebody you knew and lived in Situate at the time?
I grew up in Situate, which is the most Irish American town for its size in the country. So we're surrounded by people of Irish ancestry. So I kind of understood that. And then the other group are the Italians that are there in droves too. So I just thought having the opposite attract. Yeah. And then, of course, having a very Catholic town, you know, where people were very Catholic. And so I kind of played into that a little bit.
I think the capsule of the book used narrative well, and I don't think that will ever be used on this show ever again.
Oh,
but I love that. I love that word. But it's an example that the way you write, like your style.
Well, it's good if someone gets a new word.
Yeah, and I love. Well, I'm using it all day today. Everybody's that.
So I think I offended both ethnic groups.
Yeah, you probably did. Yeah.
So I'm not worried that the Irish are going to come after me or the Italians, because they also had the great people as well. But there were a few things I used that stayed with me. And I don't, it's kind of weird. In my family, people often say, we have such a good memory. Why did that stick with you? But Rosa, who's one of the characters, has a cat named Leonardo da Vinci. No, Mona Lisa.
Mona Lisa, yeah.
And then Leonardo da Vinci, she named the cat at the corner store. Yeah. And my best friend growing up, her mom had two cats, Mona Lisa and Leonardo da Vinci. And that always stayed with me. She was an artist. Yeah. That she had these cool names for her cats. So I used that. And then my grandmother, my dad's mom, had polio as a child. And her mother took her to the priest because she didn't want to wear the braces. And the priest said to her, you have to put them on. It's God's will. And she was a very intelligent woman. My grandmother went to BU. And so she waited for her mother to die. And then she left the Catholic Church. So that was kind of in there. I always thought that was interesting.
That was interesting. So,
yeah.
Was it help you live in Situate when you're writing a book about Situate?
It always helps to write what you know. Like with my husband's story, through his tapes and being married to him for 50 years, I knew everything. I also knew how he thought. But a lot of times he'd pull me back and say, Mary, boys don't care about that. I said, what do you mean you didn't shower for 5 days? He goes, doesn't matter. And I'm like, oh.
Nothing smells worse than a teenage boy.
But no, I think being in Situate, having personally witnessed the Etrusco, and growing up there, I graduated from Situate High School, it was a huge help.
Because you feel it, and I worked there or there too. I felt you took me to the places, even though it's a different era and different time.
Yeah, well, Situate has so much charisma to it, on so many levels. I mean, Cedar Point at the time, which is where the lighthouse is for the listeners, was very run down, that part of Situate. The lighthouse was falling apart. They didn't fix it up for another several decades. And so it was kind of the poor part of Situate. So it was nice to sort of have, that background. So it isn't the Situate of today. Like if you look at what your house is assessed at, you're like, or the market value, I'm like, what is happening to Situate? But it's a great place. If you watch the Weather Channel, Situate always ends up there, and they use the same clip at the foot of Cedar Point with the waves coming over the houses.
Because it works. It works great.
It works great. So it's a fun town to write about because of its location. And then we faced the North Atlantic fully. And so you get to the harbor, you kind of twist around, and that's a sheltered harbor. But I don't know if you remember, we covered it, but the commuter boats were kind of in conflicting with the restoration of the Old Colony Railroad. So we did a lot on commuter boats. So they decided, well, let's try a commuter boat from Scituate. So Frank Hines, who was our state rep, and Bob Hedlund, who was our state senator, and a bunch of other people, they got on a boat at Scituate Pier, and they head out. Well, they had to turn into Hingham. They were in the open Atlantic, and everyone was throwing up, and it was not a... There's no way you're going to commute to Boston on the water from Scituate.
But I think it's Massachusetts authors, like we got a few on the taping the shows and stuff.
Yeah.
We're lucky.
Oh, very lucky.
Because we've got such a rich environment to write about it.
Yeah.
They talk about movies, making movies here because you have the mountains, the ocean, and the cities. But we just can go places and see, and nothing changes.
Right.
So when you look at it that way, that's a big, huge advantage when you're writing.
Oh, yeah, and it is. And we have this, having been the editor of the Hingham Journal and then Cohasset Mariner, very different towns. But Hingham just has this preservation mentality, and it makes it just a wonderful town because there are places you can be in Hingham where you think you're in the 1700s. I mean, they have preserved the streetscape beautifully.
They have a real appreciation for history on the South Shore in general.
Yes, definitely.
What do you do when you're writing? What's your process? Do you listen to music? Do you?
No, I usually, I kind of go in fits and starts. I'm definitely a project-oriented person, so when I finish something, I feel this kind of lull, like I'd put the papers out and then on Friday and Saturday I'd recover, kind of, and then you had to turn it around. So I tend to just, if I'm in the mood, I sit down and I get into a zone. And then maybe an hour will go by, or maybe it's only 30 minutes. I don't have any rigid schedule.
You don't put like a time limit right for 3 hours?
Yeah, I'm not. I probably should, but I might do it at night or in the morning or whatever. And I love to rewrite. I love to edit.
Is that the editor?
That's the editor in me. I love to go back in there.
Do you edit as you write?
I do kind of. I go through, I'll do a few pages and I'll go back and because as you know, when you do the newspapers, you move paragraphs, you do this and that. And that was my favorite part of newspaper editing, was sort of making something really work. I always respected the reporters I had, their writing style. I didn't go in and say my need is better or anything, but so I do. I have fun rewriting, and then at some point you have to stop and say, okay, it's ready.
My biggest enemy is spell check and Grammarly. Yeah. Because why'd they change that? You know, and I find I get in fights with Grammarly.
Yeah.
It's just stupid.
I don't even use Grammarly. I just trust my own.
Oh.
But I did use Gatekeeper Press was really good about going through and doing the proofing and the copy editing. And they found like a comma thing. And I was like amazed because you'd read it through so many times, your eyes just glaze over that.
Do you like being edited after being an editor?
I do. I don't mind it if I think the person who's doing the editing knows their stuff. Like this young man that I used for Rebecca Road was a total professional, and he would go through and I sent him the manuscript 3 times, and he'd come back with 10 pages, single-spaced typed, and then he'd do page by page, and he was encouraging. But he was also firm. He would say, this is really important, and you've only given 2 paragraphs to this. You have to pull this out and do more. So I was lucky. I've always trusted. When I first started in journalism, because I had been a teacher, and I walked into the Daily Herald in Illinois, and I wanted to change my career, I listened and I learned. And so if an editor came to me and said, Mary, it doesn't work, or you need to call this or call that, I listened. I wasn't offended by that.
What about developing characters and staying to the integrity of the characters? How do you do that?
Well, I think they kind of you always want them to be more than one-dimensional. Like there are what they call flat characters in novels, and they should be far and few between, like the guy rode by on his horse or something like that. But I find that bringing the character to life and making them sensitive. Like in my first book, I was nervous that Conley's dad would be one-dimensional. He was obviously a very complicated man, had 16 children. It was the Depression for most of, the early 8 kids or whatever, 10 that were born.
Here's my grandfather.
And, so he wasn't just mean, but he was mean.
Yeah.
But I didn't want him to come out kind of flat. I don't know if it's the beginning of the movie Walk the Line,
Yeah.
where Johnny Cash is in a shed or something with his brother, who I think gets killed. And then the dad in that movie, to me, you don't even notice it because he's only in that one scene, but he's too one-dimensional. Here he is, and no wonder Johnny is leaving. But, you need to make him a little more human than that. No one is one-dimensional. Even a psychopath has more dimensions.
And Rebecca Road, how did you keep track of Catherine? How did you keep track so she didn't all of a sudden change radically? What was the...
So I did a lot of writing groups. I highly recommend people joining them and being consistent, because to be a good citizen of a writing group, and they're all on Zoom now, so you don't have to travel, is you should submit, and then everyone will read it and give you feedback. And so you have to be prepared for the feedback. In fact, the first group I was in with this young man named Colin, he didn't allow you to talk until everyone had given their feedback, because he didn't want the author saying, oh, no, that's not what I meant. You had to sit back and kind of take it. So it's just a matter of kind of layering. And I thought, well, in Conley's book, it's in the first person. So I'm the 14-year-old in his head. But this book is in the third person, but with Cass. So I was in her brain the whole time. So the whole world is how she sees it. So to me, that was easier than bouncing around with point of views. Mm-hmm. That was kind of straightforward.
What's your next book now?
I don't know. I'm in that lull right now. I'm in my marketing phase. So.
Well, you can't get out of your marketing phase because these books are too good.
Yeah, I'm happy to, visit with old colleagues like you. And I'm not old in age, but old friendship.
Yeah.
And, try to get it to take off. I mean, that's the biggest challenge, I think, is to get people to notice. And what people don't realize, when a book is on Amazon, please leave a review or a rating, because what happens is then someone is searching books, like maybe heart books. It'll make that book higher in the search, because there's like 3 or 4 million books on heart disease or whatever. So this is historical fiction, love story, shipwreck. So if it gets more reviews, then Amazon, it's not a person that's thinking, it's the algorithm. Says, oh, this is pretty good. So when someone's searching 20th century American fiction, historical fiction, it'll pop up.
Everyone, thank you. I told you we'd use one note card. I think I read blank question. This conversation has been delightful. I wish we could have gone on forever.
Oh, yeah.
I really appreciate you taking the time, too. And what I really appreciate, too, is obviously reading your books and learn that. But I appreciate you willingness to help us out, the Stoughton Writers Group, help out.
Oh, I just think it's such an important, I admire you so much for what you're doing in, quote, retirement.
Yeah, there's no retirement.
Which has opened up a whole new world, not only for you, but for people. I mean, if I can write a book, you can write a book.
That's good.
If there's no,
way to end that.
There's no magic.
Thank you to Stoughton Media Access Corporation for producing the show, and we'll see you again down the road. Thank you.